Hello and welcome to this Cloud Runner demo. In this demo, you will see the creation of an AWS Lambda function. What is in today's demo? First, we will take a brief look at some AWS terminology, such as AWS SAM, CloudFormation, and Lambda. In the following hands-on session, we will create our first Lambda function. Then, this function will be improved with logging. Finally, it is suitable to invoke database storage, but that will be the topic of the next demo. What is required? An AWS free tier account, the AWS SAM command line interface, or CLI, that is a software that you need to install on your computer. A code editor of your choice, a command line tool, and any suitable HTTP tool is required. The terminology: Serverless Application Module, or SAM. That is an open source framework to build serverless applications. The AWS SAM CLI is used to locally build, debug, deploy, and test applications. SAM can use templates that are pre-existing or custom built. As I said, the deployment happens as well with the SAM CLI. It's important to know that SAM is an extension of the AWS CloudFormation. CloudFormation is a service to model and set up AWS resources. CloudFormation defines AWS stacks. These stacks are collections of resources that interacting together as an application. CloudFormation also supports templates and it has its own programming language that is written in plain text or JSON. What is AWS Lambda? AWS Lambda is called a serverless function that runs custom code that is triggered by an event. Events that can trigger a Lambda function can be HTTP requests. It could be scheduler events from CloudWatch. It could be an email, for example, or something that happens in an S3 file storage bucket. This AWS Lambda is a very good support for the architecture of microservices. Programming language you can use to write a Lambda function are, for example, Java, Python, Node.js, Go, Ruby, or C#. It is important to know that there are some limitations for a Lambda function. For example, the used memory, or whatever you plan on executing with your Lambda function, it should be done in between 900 seconds or 15 minutes. Before you get very excited about AWS and the opportunity to write code without needing a middle tier, I want to give you a warning. Signing up for the AWS free tier does not mean that no charges can occur. If you define resources that are not free tier eligible, and that is possible, this could lead to significant charges, especially when they are not monitored. This is why it is strongly recommended to set up a billing alert in your AWS account. There are web tutorials for that. It is done in between a few minutes. It's strongly recommended. Let's get started with our hands-on demo. Remember, we have our AWS account ready. We have installed SAM locally on our computer. We have connected SAM with our AWS account, and we have our IDE and our command line ready. Just let's use the command line and type in SAM, see what we get. we get a nice list of commands that we can use, and we will start with the first one, with the init command that will initialize an AWS SAM application. Let's do this. So we are guided here through the process comfortably. Which template? So we don't have any custom templates so far, so we do the first option, AWS Quick Start Templates. And so you can see we have plenty of options here for the programming language. Let's use Python 3.8, option number 2. The project name. So we see in the brackets we get a proposal SAM app. Of course, you should always use an expressive name for anything that you create, like you would do for file or database table. You would use an expressive name. Let's call it my first Lambda function. Now we can select a template, and we go with number 1 with the Hello World example. And that's it. Before we deploy our first Lambda function to the cloud, let's see what SAM init has created for us. You can see we have a new directory here that is called like the project name we provided, my first Lambda function. And there's a subdirectory structure. There are 2 important files I want to point out. The first one is this template YAML file here. This file contains the definition of our function, and not only of the Lambda function. This definition file can contain more objects that we want to create. You see here is the resources section. Here's our function, Hello World function. That comes from the template we have chosen. It has the type AWS serverless function, and we see the runtime that we want to use, Python 3.8. That's what we were choosing. And we get created an event that will trigger the function out of the box. And it seems to be an HTTP request, like a GET request. And the handler maps to the code that's being executed. So what do we have here? app.lambda handler. We look in here. We have an app.py, a Python file, and inside that Python file, we have a function that is called Lambda handler that is being executed. And this file, this Python or whatever programming language you would like to use, here is where you code your business logic. We will extend it a bit later. So we'll see here, it is very, very simple. The only thing it does, it returns a status code and a body. Obviously, this will be the HTTP response that we will be sending for our GET request. It could be something different, but we have to start something. So this is what's getting returned. Now, enough of investigation of this creation. Let's get it deployed. Let's check the options again that we have with SAM. So we have already executed init. Now we can use validate to validate an AWS SAM template. We haven't made any changes, so we could be optimistic that AWS has created something valid for us. But let's give it a try. Change to our base directory of our project. Let's type in SAM validate. Okay, there's a green output and it says It is a valid SAM template. Imagine we make some changes here in the YAML later. Where is it? Could be a different outcome. Okay, what's next? SAM build. We should build our function before deployment. Let's do that. Build succeeded. Nice. What's next? Now we can deploy. And there is something we should do. We should do a guided deploy here. So like this. But you see, you can't go wrong. You will get the right hint to do so. Stack name. Well, the stack name again should be identical with our project name. My first Lambda function. AWS region. So remember, Amazon Web Services is a global cloud infrastructure and it works in regions. You can deploy global applications and have them available in multiple regions around the world. But for now, we should commit to one region, and your AWS account should have a region that it is tied to. Let's quickly look this up. When we have our AWS Management Console, in our AWS Management Console, you will have on the upper right corner, you will have a region showing. In my case, this is Ohio. Ohio is not the right key to get typed in, so we should look it up. So we see Ohio is US-East-2, actually. So that's our region we want to use. This way. So whatever your account is set up to, use that one. Confirm changes before deploy. Yes. Allow SAM CLI AIM role creation. So the good thing about SAM is it will create different objects for us in the background. We don't have to take care of that. And one of them is the IAM roles that take care of the permissions, that all the objects we create have the right permissions to be executed. So definitely a yes. Hello world function may not have authorization defined. Is this okay? Yes. So obviously SAM recognizes that we don't have any security in place. This code will be available to the internet, but that's okay for us right now. Save arguments? Yes. Actually, the capitals are always the default, so I shouldn't have to put that in here. Deployment is running. This question is important again, and the default is no. Definitely a yes. We want to deploy this. We can see here the green ads. We can see the objects that are created for us without that we have to do anything. So let's deploy this. That's it. Successfully created, updated, stack my first Lambda function in US East 2 in our region. Now we want to try this out for sure. And the good thing is the output provides us the endpoint for our API gateway function here. So let's take this guy. This is our actual endpoint. Copy this. This is our endpoint that we got from the console output of the SAM deploy command. Let's test it. Let's issue the GET request. And we get the hello world message. Yay, that worked. So we have deployed our first AWS Lambda function. We can do something else. So once we have our web console here, so we can see Lambda here is one of our recently visited services. If we don't have that, we could always use the search function and navigate in the objects. So you can see here it is on top. There are some other attempts already made. Here it is. We see this is our API gateway function. That is the GET request that is issued to trigger the function. You see here we could do something else. We could define functionality here in the web console, not using SAM, but be warned, if you don't use SAM, you don't have a script, so then you're tied pretty much to the web console. I would always stay with the scripting from SAM, then you have it text file persistent. But anyway, API gateway triggers the Python Lambda function. That's what we have. Now that we have our first Hello World Lambda function running, let's add a bit more functionality to it. So we know in the app.py file, we find the Python implementation of the function here in the Lambda handler. And what you want to do is you want to add some logging to it. So let's import logging. And we want to add a parameter to have something like an information exchange happening from the outer world into our function. So we see the Lambda handler by standard has two parameters. One is event, one is context. So the context parameter contains runtime information like the version of the function or the time that has elapsed once it's running, things like that. The event parameter is very interesting because it contains information about the actual call. For example, parameters that come in. If you want to know how the structure is of this variable, you can look into the AWS Lambda documentation. For us now, let's just extract a parameter that we would call pname. Like this. And of course we wanted to add logging. Let's get a logger instance. Let's set the logger level to info. Let's make our message a bit more interesting here. Use the Python string operations. Nice. And let's return this guy. Take this out from the template here. We don't do that. We also want to log what we did. Let's do this. Let's save this. And now that we have changed our Python code of our function, we need to rebuild and redeploy it. You can guess this happens again with the SAM command line. We do like a SAM build again. That has worked. And we do the SAM deploy guided. So now, because we have saved our parameters in the configuration, we can just use the defaults here. My first Lambda function, our region is there. So of course we want to confirm the changes. We shouldn't have any roles, but we can confirm that with yes at this point. The authorization though is default no, but yes, it's okay. Configuration changes, we can change them. There will be a change set about our changes that actually happen. So, and we see the resources that have changed is the function itself. The REST API, in my opinion, doesn't have changed, but it looks like it will be redeployed as well. Deploy this change set, definitely yes. Want to redeploy this. Deployment was successful. Now let's check with our REST client. Remember, we had a parameter added, like pname. We give it a value and send the request, and there it is. We get a new response by our function that invokes our parameter. Finally, we want to check if the logging has happened as we want it to. So ideally we do that with the AWS Web Console. Navigate to our Lambda function. We already know the definition here, we have seen that, but we will navigate to the monitoring tab. We got a lot of information here about what happened in execution time. And indeed, we see recent invocations of our function. We get log entries for each of them. Don't get confused about the timestamps. The timestamps in AWS, likely because it's a global infrastructure, always in UTC. So this is the recent call. We can expect this is the one that has our log entry in it. And indeed, we get information about starting, and here is our info entry, log level info, and it has our custom log message contained. What have we learned with this demo? We have seen the use of the SAM CLI, that means of the serverless application model command line interface. We have created our first very simple but functional Lambda function. We have made the build of this function and we have deployed it to AWS. Finally, we extended the function with logging functionality and we invoked a parameter. For checking the deployment endpoint, the created resources, and to get the log information, we use the AWS Web Console. Wow, that's a lot, I think. What can be the next steps and maybe the next topics of more demos? Besides the API gateway that we used to initiate our GET request to call our Lambda function, there are other triggers that can be used to initiate a Lambda function. Take a look at that. And of course, still, persistence is very important to store information that is getting processed in a database. And we could use the DynamoDB AWS database service for that. Now I can just say thank you for watching. I hope this demo contained some precious insights for your work. And I'd be happy to get feedback. Of course, positive feedback is appreciated, as well as some critical comments that you might have. Thank you and see you hopefully again for the next video.